All right, so we're just going to get started. First off, thank you for joining Live Civil. As you know, this is a safe space. This is the Live Civil platform powered by Karen Civil and me, myself. My name is Cheyenne Corinne, and I'm an LGBTQIA ally. I have a degree in women and gender studies. So this is a safe space, and I just want to start off the conversation just by saying that, especially with everything that we have going on affecting our communities right now. Can you kind of just talk about your support for Kamala and where that came from and what you encourage the Black community to do come November?
Oh man, look, at this day and age, in terms of politics and where we are in our country, I think everyone is aware that we could be doing better than we are right now, and Black people deserve more than what we're currently getting from the government, from our politicians, just in many ways. And so, I really am in support of change. I'm in support of Black folks being promised some things that they should have gotten a long time ago. And so I'm just in support of that, and I'm all about doing what's best for our community. And I think no matter where you fall in the political climate, you can admit that right now things aren't too great. So I think everybody wants to make a change, but I never encourage anyone to vote for anyone in particular. But I do encourage people to vote if that's what makes sense for them. There's some people that don't want to vote, and I respect their voice and why they're doing that. But if someone's on the fence about it, I would definitely say I think for me, voting is very empowering. If it's not empowering to you, then it's a free country.
Why were some of those key characters killed off? Like, what did the writers' room look like making some of those decisions?
Well, I think some decisions, came as a surprise. Others were artistic, and I think that's what people got to understand about TV is like, it is ever changing. You never know what's going on. Sometimes an actor, wants to move on. Other times, you kind of feel like you've come to the end of a story. So we really have to be led by our gut, by our instincts. And that's really what we did this season. But a big thing that we were able to do this season was we weren't centering men necessarily. You know what I'm saying? We were centering queer people, women, the youth. And I think that can be a bit of a shift for people. But, I know, because I see the numbers, it's our highest rated season. So sorry guys, but now I'm thinking like maybe we could keep on that path. But it literally, I mean, the numbers were like, it went up by double digits on SVOD, which means people that go back and watch it on demand, or what numbers were like off the chain. Like, so people really showed up, and also the level of engagement was the most intense it's ever been. So I think what we learned is that people want to hear human stories. We also got rid of the cop storylines, and it just, to me, it's a sort of like cops, drugs, robbery. It's sort of like I get so bored by that. I'm stepping into the writer's room again today, and virtually, and that's the big thing that I keep saying. I'm like, I'm more interested in our emotional, journeys, and these relationships and how they evolve and how they grow and how you can redefine them. That kind of stuff is really fascinating to me. And also too, I mean, yes, what does intersectionality look like in the Black community in Chicago? What happens when a Black girl goes missing? What does a relationship between two women, a blended family coming together, and what happens when they're faced with a tragedy, like, to me, and also redemption, Ronnie's story. And so I feel like you can do that without necessarily having to fall into certain tropes or do things that other people are doing. I feel like there are shows that exist where you can watch, like, okay, straight Black men do straight Black men shit. It's sort of like, okay, cool. But I'm always sort of like, I'm interested in straight Black men, but I'm more interested in their heart and their soul and their gut, and what's really, egging them on. Because I think, to me, I read somewhere, which I thought was true, they're like, that someone said like that sometimes Black men feel like getting money is a way to freedom. And it's like, not necessarily. And so it's to me, but I also know that that can be true sometimes. If cats are like, if I could just get my money together, if I could this career thing, I could do this. I'm like,
Yep.
yo, what happens when you get all that stuff?
Yes.
Then what?
Yes.
Now you sitting there like, that's
What?
when shit gets interesting.
Yes.
So for me, it's like, I feel like that's sometimes what these shows or movies or just ideas, these lives, that's what we're chasing. We're chasing financial stability, which to us equates freedom, which means comfort, which means I can do what I want. But it's like, why do you think all these rich and famous people out here going crazy?
I, you
You
know what?
know, it's like they have all the things that y'all apparently want, but they still in the shade room like everybody else. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it don't make sense to me. It's like, and when are we gonna finally realize that finances don't necessarily mean freedom?
Absolutely. You just said a word. And I was watching this season, I got that same depth from it. Like looking at everyone's different stories, especially Keisha's story. Like
Yeah.
that's the story that really needs to be told. I mean, it's a missing Black girl in Chicago. You see how that was handled, and that's so reflective of how many other cases like that
Right.
are going on, not only in Chicago, but
Mhm.
around the US. Internationally, this is an issue. What made you really want to bring that story to life? And even when you really watch it, there's also other things as far as Keisha's disappearance, as far as reproductive rights, you know,
Right.
her finding out that she's pregnant and,
Right.
you know, kind of trying to make that decision of what to do. What did you really want people to understand through that entire experience? Because she was really the focal point for
Yeah.
me this season.
Absolutely. And Burgundy who plays Keisha did such a wonderful job, and her performance, and it was so riveting, and she's been getting a lot of looks, which I'm really grateful for. But to me, it was important to show that you don't need to be perfect for people to come find you. You don't need to be perfect so that a cop won't kill you. You know what I'm saying? It's like, even I heard someone the other day say, like, I'm tired of seeing Black folks as pimps and hoes and promiscuous people. And I'm like, so are we now belittling people in our community because of the choices that they make or maybe are forced to make? And also too, I really do think, there needs to be more, just a humanization of why people do certain things, because Keisha was not some, well-to-do girl always coming home by curfew. She wasn't, always in her room doing her homework. She was sneaking around. She got a boyfriend. She was like, hanging out with her girls and getting into it a little bit and spilling tea. And the thing is, like, that's like most young Black women I
That
know.
resonates with most young Black women. Yes.
Maybe she do got a Insta that is like, everybody don't have, she got an OnlyFans Insta.
Uh-huh.
It's like, I just kind of feel like, why I don't like judging that young woman.
Yes.
I like honoring her, and holding her up, regardless of how she may be perceived. And I think, to me, that's what was so important, that we put that in there, that when you go to the group of mothers, they're like, shoot, is this the girl we should be, hanging our hat on? Is this the girl we should be searching for?
Yeah.
It's real. It's real. It's how we treat people in the media and the press. And I'm just like, yo, man, she's a human being. Her life is valid as well. Her Black life matters too.
I did see throughout all of the seasons, spirituality and religion definitely has been something that is like a reoccurring role. Yeah. So I really thought that it was interesting to see the redemption of Ronnie, but then also at the end kind of see Papa's dad get arrested, and that what kind of made you always correlate religion and spirituality throughout all of the seasons, and especially with Papa's dad and like him kind of going down at the end.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, again, just because you're a pastor doesn't mean you sanctified, And so I think that, but also pastors are human. They're human beings. We see that all the time. I think like, there's always like a minister, a pastor, or something going on. I'm like, okay, and yes, the people may hold them to a higher moral standard because of what they do. I don't, disagree with that. But we also have to acknowledge that they may be held to a higher moral standard, but they're made up of the same stuff as you and I are. They have the same temptations. They have the same, flaws and faults. And so I think it is important that I show pastors as human beings. And human beings are flawed and want things and can be misguided. And imagine a human being who is flawed and sometimes can be misguided, trying to guide their flock. So it's very complicated. No one said, that when you dealing with stuff in terms of Black people, the church, our community, that it's not going to get a little murky. It's somewhere in there, because it's not perfect. No one, I don't think someone would say that it is. And so it's prime real estate to explore, because I'm a person who is a believer. I grew up going to church, but my parents said they couldn't quote the Bible to save their lives. But there are certain families that can, and but some people may say they may worship Jesus but don't act like him. And so I think that to me is something that I wanted to explore. It's so interesting. And religion and spirituality will always like find its way into the work. But to me, it's also something to be explored and not just sort of accepted as is. Like, we have to, just how we have to look at ourselves, sometimes we have to look at the things we believe in.
Absolutely. And another scene that kind of touched me, and I actually, the second time I watched it, I kind of caught this when Kevin and his new girlfriend, they were talking about therapy. And that's not a conversation that you openly see, especially young Black kids talk about. And I was just like, that was intentionally put in there. And when I really watched it the second time, I was seeing her open up, like, this isn't something that anyone knows, only my parents know about it.
Right.
Why did you put that in there? Why do you think that therapy is important for especially our community?
Well, because we have a lot of trauma, and some old, some new, and some that we create ourselves, some that we can't escape. And so we need help to navigate it. And I think you can read the Bible and go see a therapist, simultaneously. So some people don't necessarily believe that. But either way, we all get to make choices. We all get to do what makes sense for us. And I thought, it was important that because of what Kevin had been through on the show, that we thought that his mother would want to make sure he spoke to someone. And we thought that this young woman who he was dating, Gemma, who comes from, an affluent family, that's something that, so oftentimes in those communities, their kids are in therapy, like, after kindergarten, just to make sure everything is all right. We have to sometimes go through something in order to go to therapy. I've now since learned you should get into therapy so that way when something comes up, you know how to deal with it, rather than waiting for something to come up and then going to, fix it after the fact. So it was just something we really wanted to run toward and not shy away from. And especially when you're dealing with kids who have parents, I think that are very involved and are very concerned. I think it's a misconception that Black parents aren't concerned with their children's mental health. I believe that they are. And so I think that it's a thing that's happening. And it's a thing that, I definitely encourage. I go to therapy. I don't know where I would be if I didn't. And so, so also too, there are people that maybe are afraid of it or intimidated by it. And I think there's also something to normalizing it, in conversation and on TV shows.
Got it. Now, I was happy to also see that you popped out and you played an acting role this season. What made you actually pop out, and what's the significance of this character for you? I saw, a few scenes where, like when they were trying to get you to back out of the election, and it was so symbolic of what happens so often in the political landscape, what happens in so many corporate rooms. So what was the importance of that role, and what made you want to actually play it?
Well, I think a big influence was our actual mayor in Chicago, but also too, the conversation in the writers' room was that just because she's Black and gay and a woman doesn't necessarily mean she's always progressive, or that we're gonna just always be happy with the things that she says, and that really was inspiring and interesting to me. And I liked, and that just really excited me, because I think the network had wanted me to be a part of the show in front of the scenes before, but it just didn't really make sense. It felt a little cheesy. And then this season, which was a very unique season where we really want to kind of introduce some new characters, it just made sense. And I think as a as a city, we're very proud of the fact that, they've elected, this Black queer woman. And, but at the same time, you got to make sure you hold, elected officials accountable, regardless of who they are and who they love. You can't get a pass just because, you know, you're marginalized. And I think that's what was exciting to me about the idea of playing a character like that. So it's not based on Mayor Lightfoot. I know a lot of people are saying that, not at all. But for us, it gave us opportunity to kind of play into what was actually happening in Chicago. So
definitely, that makes sense. Now, you introduced some new characters that are part of the LGBTQIA community, and there was a lot of backlash on social media. People pretty much saying, I feel like it's too much. What do you have to say to things like that? And why do you think that it's important for there to be representation of these characters in your show? And why do you think that people have to say things like it's too much, as far as the scene with the stripper, as far as the transgender role that's on the show? Like, why do you think that people were offended by this? And what do you have to say to people saying that it's too much?
well, I think it may feel like it's too much because there's not enough representation of us in shows like this. I think sometimes when gay or queer characters pop up in shows, that there's sometimes it does feel like tokenism, or it doesn't really feel like there's a queer person in the room. But I do appreciate the efforts among, you know, Black showrunners making sure that we're not invisible, you know. But I think if I do it, then I'm really trying to make sure, because I am a queer woman, you know, woman of color sitting at the head of the table, that it is a little bit more expected for the characters to be super nuanced, you know, and very authentic. And so I take that responsibility very seriously. And but also, too, at the same time, I can't represent for every queer Black person just because that's too big a responsibility. But you know, I think I welcome it. I welcome pushback, because if you're not getting pushback on the art, you know, then that means it's safe. And if people feel good and cozy, then I'm not doing my job. If I don't want to give you something you've already eaten before. You know, I want you to try something new. You know, and maybe find out you may like it. So, and I think that, and not to get that confused, because I know there's this horrible propaganda.
I know what you're gonna say.
This kind of thing, you know, this agenda. It's like,
here's pushing it on everyone.
Here's how I can debunk that. I didn't see no gay people on TV growing up, and I'm the gayest person I know. So at the end of the day, it's like, you are who you are, you know. And but I think that, again, like, because that backlash exists, only encourages me to continue to make sure I'm putting us into the narrative and into the culture until that goes away. I mean, and again, all those people that are saying, oh, this is too much. White people said the same shit when Blacks and whites were seen as romantic interests on screen. They said it was the same thing. It was like, this is an agenda, this race mixing, goes against everything we believe. Same type of dialogue with this. So look, it's all cyclical. It's like, I'll take the hits, you know, in order for things to look differently when I'm gone. Take the swing.
I'm so glad you said that. Everything you just said, because I have had to defend the show a few times on social media, but I'm like, listen, she's the person that can really like put this to rest, because it's frustrating, because, you know, you want like, it's representation of what the world actually looks like. Like, why do you want to watch something that's not representation of the life that we actually live? And if whatever life you live, you don't see that there's different people and there's intersectionality, then that's, you're not living right. Like, and you're not opening your eyes to there's a diverse people around you, because this is realistically what our world looks like. And I think that it's also important to give queer folks a chance to play these roles, because before in the past, you know, there sometimes would be these roles, but they wouldn't be for people actually in the community.
Right.
And that's something also that I do value, is actually giving people that are actually in the community a chance to play the roles that are meant for them, because it goes back to race, letting Black people play the roles that are meant for Black people. And that's something that wasn't done before. And we still sometimes see that not happen all of the time, where people who, you know, can, you know, kind of pass are playing these roles that are not meant for them. So I do also value that part of it also.
Yeah, no, it's important. And ultimately, it's like, to me, I just always laugh, because like, if somebody's really hating on the show that much, then you wouldn't be tweeting about it. You wouldn't be talking about it. You know, it's like,
Right.
but also too, it's like if I can make something that frustrates you so much that you take to Instagram to leave a comment, I thank you. That's me doing my job. Because it's like I'd rather be hated and loved than ignored. You know, if you're not talking about the show, then I'm not doing my job. But I welcome a debate. Art is supposed to be debated. You know, whenever everybody, you know, loves something, you know, then I feel like maybe there's a risk that could have been taken that wasn't.
Absolutely, absolutely. Now let's talk about these upcoming projects. What do you have in the works? I know that you do have a new series about open marriages, which is really interesting to me. But what else do you have as far as open upcoming projects that you want people to know about?
Well, the open marriage thing is I wrote a pilot, you know,
Okay.
about that. So I'm still waiting, you know, working with Amazon to see if we're gonna go forward with it. But people are like that story ran, people are like, oh yeah, she's filming it next month. It's like,
Yeah,
nah,
like,
like
and then
we're
when I started looking, I'm like, it looks like it's very much so in the like, you know,
early stages.
beginning stages.
There's a script that I wrote, but you know, now we're talking to some writers and we're gonna try to get like hopefully a small room together and figure it out. You know, and then go from there because there's so much work that goes into like all the things you need to get cracking with a show. But no, the thing I'm very excited about is a movie called The 40-Year-Old Version, spelled Version, written, directed, and starring Rada Blank. Very excited for people to meet her. She's been a friend of mine for many years. She's extremely talented, obviously, as people will see. And she just shot a wonderful film, man. Shot in black and white on film, all on location in New York City. And her Blood, Sweat, and Tears is on the celluloid. And it's such a throwback, you know, to that independent cinema that we're, so some of us grew up on, some of us may not even be familiar with, but it's such a beautiful story, and it's about finding your voice, and it's dope, and it'll be on Netflix October 9th, and I can't wait for everybody to see it. Yeah, and I got a couple other things up my sleeve. There's also a show I'm doing that I'm an EP on. I'm very proud to be a part of. It's called Them Covenant, and it's all about covenants and red lines and zoning and where people can live and where they can't. And it's an anthology series, but the first season focuses on a Black family that moves into a white neighborhood that happens to be Compton in 1953. And the only thing scarier than the white neighbors that don't want them there is
Yeah.
the house that they're moving into, which is actually haunted. So it's called Them Covenant. It's created by Little Marvin, and hopefully that'll be out next year. And that's with Amazon. But yeah, we got, and then also we got a season 2 of 20s. So we're waiting to film that next year. And yeah, we haven't, like, the announcement will be out soon, but there's
Okay.
definitely more Shy to come.
Yes.
A lot more of it, and that's all thanks to really the viewers, the lovers, the haters, those that were indifferent. Like y'all had us trending every week, whether you were mad or happy, and it really sent a big message to the network. And so I think we're gonna be talking about the Shy for a long time.
Yes, yes. Well, I'm excited. I'm excited
Yeah.
for all that. All that.
Cool. It's good, man. We working, man. I got some out here working right now. I got these boards up
I
here.
see. I'm like, it looked like so you're virtually in writing rooms right now.
Yes. I'm doing a lot of virtual meetings,
Okay.
a lot like this. But then, but because I have an outdoor area, I can do some little meetings out here about
Okay.
story, character stuff, because we can actually social distance.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
it's been really great. But yeah, just been staying creative, because at the end of the day, this is what I do.
yeah.
This is my life's work. This is my purpose.
Mhm.
So I'm always producing and putting projects together. Some things I'm writing myself. A lot of people think I direct. I do not direct. That is not a job for me. I like to produce. I like
Uh-huh.
to write, and every now and then I moonlight as an actor. So,
Why
but
don't
yeah,
you why do you ever see yourself directing?
no, because
Okay.
here's the thing. I think a lot of people think that directing is easy. And it
Right.
is not. It's like, it's the most like difficult thing. I'm very blessed to have very talented friends who are directors, but
Okay.
you have to be a visionary, in order to be a great director.
Yeah.
And my vision works differently. I like imagining things, I like writing things, but
Mhm.
in order to be a director, you really got, and you also have to be able to lead. You got to manage. You're making a bunch of decisions.
Yeah.
You have to really know how to work with your DP. You have to know shots. It's a very technical but very artful uh you know way of making a living. And my brain doesn't always work like that. And so whenever people people come up to me and tell me they want to be a director, I'm always like, okay, you sure? You
Right.
sure? You sure that's your
Right.
thing? Because I think a lot of people think like, oh, I can go do that. And but you know, I've been around the Molinas, the Justin Simeons, the Dime Davises, the Tiffany Johnsons, like the Justin Tippings,
You
the
know,
A.P. Rockwells, you know, the Rada Blanks. Like I see what it takes, and I'm gonna stay in my lane.
like I see it close up. What goes
Yes,
into it? No, I feel you on that. I feel you on
right
that.
in that writer's chair.
Yeah, people think that just like producers, they'll just quickly hop into directing and
They
then
want to
go.
put on a beret and
Yeah, like
get
no.
no, ma'am. I'm
Nah,
good.